The use of the word racism can at times be more related to other major human deficiencies than an accurate meaning of the word. It appears that most humans have proclivities to overgeneralizations, bias, exaggeration, being out of sync with reality, distorting reality, flawed perceptions, inaccurate conclusions, interpretations, distorting certain facts, unyielding when confronted with facts contrary to their preferred conclusions. In many instances, perspectives and perceptions are not based on analysis of the available pertinent facts. Rather than pursuing accurate information, many reject what does not support their preferred conclusions. This goes for both having racist tendencies as well as accusing other individuals or entities as being racist. Too often, certain facts and statistics are not put in the proper perspective. Emphasis is often placed on something that encompasses a small percentage of occurrences, yet is purported to be the norm. Often it's rare for people to accentuate the positive. Too often the positive is ignored, and the negative purported to be far more than actuality. Here in the U.S.A., the term racism has different meanings, different implications, and is widely used for different purposes. Some people of different ethnicities, nationalities, cultures have certain unflattering beliefs and perceptions of other groups. Different combinations exist, including African Americans, blacks being prejudicial against Caucasians, white people. However, the term has mostly been used describing African Americans being victims of white racism. The existence of such racism has contributed to a lot of injustice, savagery, suffering, and other negative repercussions for the numerous victims, and also generally the nation as a whole. Obviously, there have been dramatic improvements, but obviously there continue to exist many issues. Repercussions continue even from long since discontinued slavery and legal discrimination. It's part of a vicious cycle. The legacy of slavery, legal discrimination, left African American populations in very disadvantaged situations. Such conditions inhibited certain advancement and parity with the general population. Such conditions resulted in substandard living conditions for many. Such conditions fostered environments plagued with undesirable behavior. Numerous individuals immersed themselves in undesirable behavior and did not make the efforts to overcome their predicament. Numerous others attempted to overcome their adversities but were unable to do so. Numerous communities allow little hope for prosperity and parity with the general population. Many outside the communities attributed to the undesirable behavior and other factors as being part of the nature of African Americans. Racism, discrimination, etc. increased. With the increase of racism, discrimination, some conditions worsened. As undesirable behavior increased, so did racism. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and many others were crucial in improving some situations and conditions. Others continued to perpetuate undesirable behavior and inhibit advancement. But what are the accurate true meanings of the word racism? What are the reasons for the existence of racism? Which circumstances foster racism? What are some of the ways to diminish or attempt to eradicate racism? Also, terms such as racism have frequently been used inaccurately. Besides being based on inaccurate conclusions, many users have had ulterior motives. It has been a common tool of manipulation and used for extortion. Many businesses have made contributions to certain individuals and organizations to avoid being labeled racist. Many have routinely claimed they were the victims of racism just because something did not work out as they had expected. Many apprehended for committing criminal offenses claimed they were mistreated by the racist justice system, even where fair-minded African Americans were the arresting law enforcement officials. Judges, prosecutors, and numerous local, state, and federal officials involved in policymaking and enforcement procedures are black. Sometimes they can lead to concepts that are extremely absurd. An example of this deals with views that people that are considered to be white are in some ways indebted to people considered to be black, stemming from slavery in the U.S. But consider the following. Many black Africans promoted slavery. Most white Americans do not have ancestors that promoted slavery. Due to forced interbreeding, many black Americans have ancestors that promoted slavery. Many black Americans do not have ancestors that were slaves. Accordingly, would that indicate that some black Americans are indebted to other black Americans due to their heredity? Are some black Americans that have ancestors that promoted slavery indebted to some white Americans that have ancestors that were slaves? Do large numbers of people regret their existence since they exist due to evil that was perpetrated on their ancestors? For better or for worse, people exist today because of their heredity and what transpired in the past. Some of what can be misconstrued as racism include misperceptions, misguidance, miscommunication, misinterpretation, misunderstanding, believing inaccurate information, stereotypes, then being apprehensive of perceived possible threat, simple human nature, bias, generalizing, misuse of statistics, making statements, private conversation, humor that does not accurately reflect one's actual feelings. In fact, some people just get confused, exaggerated, misspeak, take things out of context, say things just to impress others, are role-playing, repeating what someone else said, also making undesirable statements while angry or in a bad mood. Consider what some people say out of anger. That doesn't at all reflect their true feelings. I hate you. I wish you were dead. I wish you were never born. I hate everybody. I wish I were dead. I never want to see you again. I don't care about anything. I'll kill you. Someone can be obese, having a loving family member that is obese, yet call someone else a fat slob. Someone bald can call someone else a bald-headed son of a bitch. A mother can call her son a son of a bitch. Phrases that often do not at all reflect their true feelings. White people in the U.S., especially those that are well known, can very easily be classified as being racist, even much more intensely when the word nigger was used. Whether very recent or occurring years ago, certain statements made by some individuals can be used to devastate their lives. Again, this includes statements made while joking or other humor, during a rant, during a private conversation, out of anger not reflecting one's true feelings, out of context, while misspeaking, without much forethought, regarding some racial opinions, issues, situations, but not true racism. For any reason other than accurately expressing one's true ideology, many have been vilified, terminated from positions, forced to resign positions, lost credibility or appeal, isolated, and had other actions taken against them. Even just a few words, even from years in the past, can suddenly be used to define a person's existence. For some, their lifetime of words, deeds, and actions can be disregarded, and a few words spoken by them used to turn them into an ugly figure of racism. Also, can it be considered that most human beings are more complex than that? Don't some people have different changing and conflicting feelings? And does using so-called racist language indicate that someone is really a racist? Is it 0 or 100% with nothing in between? Is it relatively simple to qualify as being a racist? and often people that are unjustifiably called racist do not have others defending them. Many are concerned that they will also be called racist if they defend the accused. Accusing others of being racist is the weapon of choice, or primary means of achieving objectives for some. One of the easiest undesirable titles to get, along with the growing popularity of classifying people as being homophobic. It is highly significant where people buy or rent residence to live with their families. Many factors including safety, opportunities, enjoyment, and value of their property come into consideration. Very important life and investment decisions can be involved, sometimes affecting families for generations. The term white flight has often been used when certain people moved or declined to move to a location based on the presence of neighbors that were African American. Often those people were considered to be racist. But consider the following. There are some valid statistics that make it prudent to avoid certain locations. Numerous people classified as African American, Black, have moved out or avoided areas because of the presence of other African Americans. Some of them have a lot more knowledge, insight, and experience of living with other Blacks than many of those classified as part of the white flight. Some have been much more discriminatory, and some have met the criteria for being described as racist. Many African Americans feel that living in certain areas where the inhabitants are predominantly African American is unsafe, undesirable, and irresponsible for their families. Yet members of the ethnic groups with the same feelings have been classified as racists and bigots. Often their concerns were exaggerated or unfounded, at times mainly cultural differences, but not necessarily accurate to classify them as being racist. Very important, though, the existence of such locations is not a simple racial issue. It can be a combination of certain demographic factors as well as the individual behavior. Also, unfortunately, certain subcultures among many African Americans, Blacks, cause, foster, and perpetuate undesirable values and behavior while inhibiting progress. Certain attributes are met with disdain based on the perception they are synonymous with being white. Racism against white people and other Black people is rampant among numerous segments of certain African American communities. If it were possible to answer the questions below, how many people would be enlightened? It could place things more in the proper perspective. First, regarding white people. How many think Blacks are inherently inferior? How many consider Blacks are being equal? How many consider Blacks to be superior in some ways? How many have a negative opinion based on personal experiences, knowledge, and/or news reports? Is a person racist if they think most Blacks are desirable people, but many are undesirable? How many feel guilty about racism, have gone out of their way to help Blacks? How many feel ashamed to be white because of how some Blacks have been treated? How many are intimidated? How many have committed atrocities against Blacks out of contempt? How many have risked their lives to save Blacks? How many feel compelled to support Blacks contrary to their true feelings? How many rarely even think in terms of race? How many have been falsely accused of being racist? How many have mistreated others because of their race? How many have mistreated others without regard to race? How many mostly admire Blacks? Now ask some of the same questions about Blacks. It is obvious that a number of white people have racial animus against Black people. Some of the reasons for such feelings can involve generalizing that certain undesirable behavior is inherent in Black people, being victimized by Black people, having a limited frame of reference, predominantly negative news coverage, being influenced by the opinions of others, being aware of certain statistics involving some Black people, misinterpretations, misunderstandings, misconceptions, misguidance, inadequate education, envy, ignorance, stupidity, being mean-spirited, having a diminished intellectual capacity. However, it should not be ignored that sometimes it involves undesirable behavior perpetrated by Black people. This even if the reactions, conclusions, and assumptions of the white people are exaggerated, illogical, or inaccurate.